Hi, my name is Kim and I'm a speech pathologist, and I'd like to talk about the 3 ways that have worked for me to get my students to make the R sound. But before I do that, I want to mention a couple of things. First of all, there are actually 2 different ways that you can make the R sound. If this would be your tongue, this is the front and this is the back, you can lift up the tip of your tongue, and that's called a retroflex R. Or you can lift up the back of your tongue, and that's called the back or bunched R. And I prefer to work on the back or bunched R because I've just had way more success with that. The second thing I wanted to say is that I tend to work on the ER or ER sound because that is the foundation for all the other R sounds in any word. So let's get started. So to make an sound, make sure your students know where the front of their tongue is, the back of their tongue, the sides of their tongue, and the insides of their molars. Even touch them with the tongue depressor just so they know and they can feel where they are. Talk to them about how you want them to lift up the back of their tongue and stretch out the back so that the sides of their tongue are touching the insides of their molars. So what you do is you just open your mouth slightly and then think about lifting up the back of your tongue so that the sides are touching your molars. This is the second way that I work on the sound. And this is especially good for those students who you notice maybe have a lot of jaw movement when they're trying to make the R sound, like going back and forth. And that's because their jaw is not stable. And you really need to have a stable jaw foundation to make the sound. So this technique was developed by Sacks of SATPAC speech. And what he says to do is to put 3 tongue depressors together and then tape the ends so it's just kind of this thick stick. And then you hold it between your teeth, and that really kind of stabilizes your jaw. When you're holding it, just make sure that the jaw is dropping straight down like this, and that your lower teeth aren't jutting out. Okay, so just drop it down, hold the tongue depressors there, and then you say the E sound. And when you say the E sound, you should feel that the sides of your tongue are kind of up, touching the molars. So say the E sound, and then slowly slide your tongue back. Keep it up and high, and slide it back like you're going to say ga, but you don't need to say ga. And the position that your tongue is in between E and ga is the position for the sound. So let's try it. E-ga. So that point between the E sliding back to the ga, there's a point in the middle there where it's the right tongue position to make the sound. So try that. And even if you don't quite get the sound, even if you can get them to hold that position, that kind of E pushed back towards the ga, that again is getting that tongue just a little bit closer to making that sound. And you can start with that feeling and that placement and try to work on getting getting them then to try to make the tongue go a little bit up, a little bit more back. Just play around with it and see if you can get a clearer sound. For some students, it works better to say E and push it back and say SHA. So if ga doesn't work, try SHA. The third way I work on the sound is by what I call tongue push-ups. So what I do is I have the student first just say an sound. And when you say your tongue is flat. It's just down in the bottom of your mouth. And my colleague Phyllis had a great idea about using a visual, and her visual is using a bullseye, a target. And so when you say that is very far from an sound. If the bullseye is and is down here. And so then we talk about trying to get that tongue up and back and stretched out. Let's try to get it a little closer to Let's try to turn that into an And so they might go, and I'll go, okay, well that's closer, so that's maybe about here. And so it just gives a really good visual as to where that tongue is and how close they are to the sound. When I say tongue push-ups, what I often get the student to do is to go and so they're really trying to make a difference between the tongue down and then the tongue up and back. And it's not going to sound very different, right? They might sound quite similar, but what you're really trying to do is give them the cueing of getting the tongue up and back and stretched, and really trying to make a difference between and Another tip when your student is trying to say the sound is to try to imitate what they're doing, because that will give you some clues as to where their tongue might be. And most of the time, it either needs to be further back, further up, or more stretched out. So those are the 3 ways that have worked for me to get my students to say the sound. I encourage you to try them out, and don't give up if it doesn't work the first time or the 3rd time or whatever. You have to keep playing around with it and be persistent, because it does usually take quite a long time to get a good sound. The other thing I would say is that you will probably need to build your students' awareness of what they're doing with their mouth. It's hard because you can't see your tongue. And so having the visual, like the target, helps, because they can see how close they might be to the sound. And if they do get a little bit closer, you can stop them and say, oh, can you do that one again? What were you doing with your mouth when you made that sound? And see if they can start to realize, oh, I was pushing my tongue back a bit, or oh, my tongue was going up. So just building that awareness will really help them to understand what's going on. So good luck. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope it was helpful.